Good evening, Elkin. It's good to be back. And I'd like to thank the kind people that said such sweet things to me on the way in. And yes, I do have a news story tonight. It really doesn't have a title, because up until about 3:30, I was still working on it. So let's just call it The Lawyer versus the Woodchuck. Okay. It always hadn't been like this, but it was certainly different now. A laser-straight fence ran along the edge of the woods, protecting the pines from the hayfield. Another ran along an old stone wall, giving it a straightness it never had before. The newest and oddest was a fence that ran along a seasonal creek, maintaining the EPA's required distance to preserve the water quality. Notoriously independent, deer simply jumped the fence to drink, muddying the precious creek. Preserving the stone wall, Grandfather Woodchuck would rearrange the rocks to his satisfaction. After all, he was the latest in a long line of woodchucks to inhabit the site. His burrow had been handed down from millennia, from one senior woodchuck to the next. As far as the current grandfather knew, each predecessor had died of old age facing the sun. It had been tough and go the past few centuries, with farmers thinking they could eke a crop from the glacial tilled soil. But spring after spring, the only crop was more stones. Mother Nature seemed to enjoy the game and never ceased to produce a bountiful crop with each new thaw. This farmer was a little different, however. For the past 3 years, he had dutifully picked the spring crop of stones to pile on the wall. He could cope with this. Being molested here. If you don't like it, just say so. It was the holes in the ground, in the tall grass the woodchucks had made, that truly irritated him. His tractor would drop into the holes, jarring his back and wreaking havoc on the machinery. If nothing else, the farmer developed an intense descriptive vocabulary for the mammalian residents of the stone wall. It was after one especially back-jarring day that a stranger in a pinstripe suit knocked on the front door of the farmhouse. Normally, only preachers or salesmen knocked on front doors, but he wasn't carrying a Bible or a sample case, which left the farmer puzzled. Before the farmer could speak, the stranger asked permission to hunt on the land. As the farmer was fomenting a polite but firm no, the stranger added he was only interested in hunting woodchucks. Immediately the farmer responded, "Yes, and I have just the one for you." "Great. Sounds like you have a problem varmint, my specialty. Here's my card. I'll be back in the spring," replied the suit. Telephone numbers were exchanged with a bit of small talk and a handshake, and the men parted. On the way back to the city, the suit, which was a lawyer, went on a conference call with the rest of his hunting buddies. Now, these gentlemen had enough money to buy fancy weapons, go on to exotic trips, and kill dangerous animals. But for some reason, woodchucks were their specialty. Now, a woodchuck isn't a very large animal, not much bigger than a small dog or a very fat cat with short legs and a stubby tail. But they are extremely fast when they want to be. And they're rather sneaky in many different ways. Fall lingered long enough to get a third hay cutting, which was sold right from the field, and then winter hit with a blast. Grandfather was snug in his burrow and slept through the dark months. The farmer spent the winter in his machine shed repairing the hay baler. It was an antique at best, and the woodchuck holes had been hard on it. Next year he would have to go slower over the fields, which would take more in gas. Maybe after the first pass he would put stakes to flag the holes. A thought. More work up front might save repair time later. But then he remembered something his grandmother had told him. The next day he was at the farm store and bought all the boxes of mothballs they had. Going through the field, he carefully dropped large amounts of mothballs in each hole. This should drive them out of here. Sure would drive me out. The next day, when he came out to the field, it was covered with mothballs, stacked ever so nicely beside each hole. Okay, this is war, the farmer declared. The next day, he went back to the farm store and was told he had to go to the gun store, and he found himself a gas canister. Not gas like you put in your car, but like a smoke bomb type canister. This should do it, the clerk assured him. So out to the field he went, lit the canister, dropped it in the hole, and ran for cover. Smoke billowed out of the hole for about 10 seconds. And then it came flying out of another hole about 20 foot away. That didn't work either. The farmer was out of options. He was hoping that lawyer would come back and take care of his problems. When the lawyer didn't have appointments with his clients, he was at the gun range sighting in a new scope that Santa had delivered. In between times, he was in the basement trying different formulas for ammunition. Half jokingly, his wife said if they divorced, she would name that damn woodchuck as the cause. Oof. They would laugh, but he would put his gear away and come up for dinner. Both felt that spring couldn't come soon enough. The afternoon arrived when the lawyer showed up at the farmer's door. Jovial small talk to catch up on events over the winter, reviewing the ground rules for when and where to hunt, another handshake. The farmer went back to his fertilizer calculations, and the lawyer went to scope out for a hunting blind. He had a plan if the terrain would cooperate. Grandfather had an obvious main entrance to his burrow, and just in case, many others less visible were scattered around on both sides of the stone wall. The lawyer noted one of the just in case, that's quotes, just in case, exit holes along the barbed wire fence that ran between the woods and the hayfield. Using his spotting scope, he ran the distances between the main hole and the hidden one. For his plan to work, he needed a blind to fool the old woodchuck, if that was possible. Along the creekside fence, he found a spot and pitched a camel-colored tent that would act as his hunting blind, which would give him a clear sight not only to the main entrance, but to the one hidden beside the barbed wire fence. Before sunup, the lawyer slipped into the blind and waited for daylight and the woodchuck. Both knew full well the other was there, but not quite sure where. Just as the rising sun began to tint the stone wall a warm shade of pink, the lawyer was able to spot the woodchuck peeking out of the hole by the barbed wire fence. Grateful to a misspent youth learning to be a ventriloquist, this lawyer threw his voice towards the stone wall. It was the soft, high-pitched whistle of a very receptive female woodchuck. Blowing a loud huff in response, Grandfather popped out of the hole, but made direct eye contact with the lawyer. And it was as if he was looking straight into the man's mind, which shut him down completely. Too late this time, the woodchuck popped back into his hole with a little whistle and a chuckle, but time is going to be different. The following week, the lawyer showed up and pitched not just a blind, but a deer stand up in a tree. Now, normally animals don't look up, so he figured that Woodchuck's never going to see him up there, and he positioned himself behind a few branches, sighted in his weapon, and was ready for Grandfather to appear. And Grandfather did appear, and again he looked straight into his eyes. And this completely unnerved the lawyer. He didn't know what to do. He couldn't shoot. He was completely dazed. Again, the woodchuck whistled and disappeared into his hole. 2 strikes. The lawyer was completely flabbergasted. His ground blind, which had always worked before, didn't work this time. And the deer stand, much to his surprise, didn't work either. He didn't know what to do. And he sat up there in the deer stand for quite a while, thinking, what can I do? His mind was completely blank. On the way home, he thought over and over and over again, what can he do? And just as he pulled in his driveway, a thought came to him. He's been going at this all wrong. So the following weekend, he went back up to the farm, talked to the farmer, went out in the field, and sat himself down along the tree line. Put a tripod up and his spotting scope, and in plain sight, he was daring the woodchuck to show up. It didn't take long. Grandfather appeared and then disappeared as quickly. Lawyer just sat there and just waited, using his ventriloquist talents. Instead of sounding like the receptive female, he decided he would tack in the other direction. He gave a huffing sound of Grandfather calling the female to him. At this, the female popped her head up, going, "Ooh, where's my fiance? Where'd he go?" And Grandfather popped up, made eye contact with the lawyer, but when he realized the female was standing there, turned his eyes away, and at that moment, the lawyer fired. "Gotcha." And he laughed all the way across the field to the stone wall, picked Grandpa up, stuffed him down the hole, and put a nice big rock on top of him. Oh, success at last. It was over. He had bagged the wiliest of all vexing mammals, the woodchuck. Sure, his great-grandfather had shot a tiger in India, but there had been beaters driving the animal to him, almost like shooting fish in a barrel. Throughout the generations, the lawyer's ancestors had traveled to distant land to hunt exotic creatures. Always there had been hunt masters or guides in control. This hunt had been all his, and he couldn't wait to get home to tell his wife. The farmer offered her steak dinner to celebrate, but the only celebration he wanted was waiting at the end of several hours' drive downstate. Reliving the hunt, the lawyer hardly noticed the miles passing and almost missed his exit. Not waiting to waste time, he didn't park the car in his garage, took his shoes off as he stepped onto the front porch, and silenced the security alarm. This was against all the safety rules that he and his wife had devised. He had some very unsavory people as clients, and his wife was extremely worried about security. And they had a code that he was supposed to call, let the phone ring twice, and then hang up. And above all, he was not to sneak into the house, but to make as much noise as a normal person would. Which he didn't do. He didn't want to wake his wife. He wanted to surprise her. So he violated all of her safety rules. Tiptoeing up the stairs, he forgot about the board that she had installed that creaked. And he stood for a moment, waiting to see if there was going to be any noise from her bedroom. And there wasn't, so he tiptoed the rest of the way up. As he opened the bedroom door, ever so quietly, everything stopped. The world got completely still. There was his wife sitting on the bed, her revolver in hand pointed at him. Now they say the last thing that goes before you die is your hearing. He could hear some screams. Now whether it was his, or his wife, or that little female woodchuck when she saw her fiance being killed, he couldn't tell. But he heard the gunfire, and he knew she wasn't going to miss. She had taken too many shooting courses. And then, in the background, he could hear laughter. Old Grandfather Woodchuck was laughing, laughing, laughing. He may be dead, but he got his revenge. Thank you.